In this video you will learn how to get more out of the widgets like Heatmap to make management using dashboards easier and most efficient, as well as how to make widget configurations reusable. In our use case, we would like to have a quick way to switch the view in a heatmap from being CPU allocation focused to CPU demand to analyze the capacity. Like in this example, where we can switch the heat map for cluster remaining resources from capacity to time or VM. Okay, let us quickly check how to configure that feature. So what we would like to have is basically a list where we can select a data center, send that selected data center as input object to the heat map to view the cluster capacity from the CPU perspective and have the ability to select between demand and allocation model, and then send that selected cluster to the both new widgets we learn in this video, the time remaining and the capacity remaining widget. I have already configured the object list and the necessary interactions so we can focus on the heat map. As usual, let us first rename the widget and set the input transformation to children, as we would like to see the children vSphere clusters for the selected data center in this heatmap. To have different views on different metrics within one heatmap, this widget provides the concept of configurations. Our first configuration will show us the remaining CPU capacity from the demand perspective using the corresponding metric. After giving the configuration a unique name, we can specify how to group the tiles within the heatmap for this config. As the metric we are going to use in this heatmap is not an instance metric, we set the mode to general. And now the most important part. First we need to specify the object type which is going to be displayed in the heatmap, and then we need to tell the heatmap how to size and how to color the single tiles. For both you can specify a metric or leave it fixed. In our example, we set the size by value to be fixed, so every cluster in a selected data center will have the same size in a heatmap presentation, and the color for every cluster will be determined using the demand capacity remaining metric. Now we adjust the color for the minimum and the maximum value, and as the unit for CPU remaining capacity in the demand model is megahertz, we need to adjust the maximum value to something meaningful for the particular environment. Now we can save the widget and we see the three clusters I have in this data center presented by the same size and having different colors according to the selected metric, the capacity remaining for CPU in megahertz. In our use case, we would like to have a quick way to switch the heat map from being demand driven to allocation. For this requirement, we simply add another configuration to the heat map. As in the first configuration, we need to specify the group by object type, as this is a required field. We set the actual object type to be displayed in the heat map to cluster compute resource, and the color by metric to this time allocation CPU remaining capacity with vCPU as the unit. As last step, we need to adjust the max value, as we are now using vCPUs as the unit for remaining capacity. Now we have an easy way to switch the heatmap from demand to allocation driven context using the configuration drop-down menu. Now you are ready to add more configurations to that heatmap to, for example, display the memory capacity remaining. Now let's learn how to make the configuration of several widgets a lot easier. Let's imagine you need to create a dashboard or multiple dashboards with different widgets showing the same set of metrics. One way to do this is to edit every single widget. Add your object type or object types you would like to show in this particular widget, add the metrics you would like to display, and probably edit every single metric in every single widget to change the label or to configure the color method. And now if you have to do this over and over again for multiple widgets with maybe more than 3 metrics, just because you would like to have another thresholds, you will be happy to hear that there is a quicker solution for that. The configuration files are the best way to create a reusable set of metric descriptions. First, we create a new configuration in the resource kind folder and give it a name. Now we need to select the metrics we would like to have in this configuration following the order: first adapter type, which is vCenter in our case, then the resource kind, which is host system in that case, and once we have selected the host system, we are presented with all the available metrics. you can select multiple metrics by clicking exactly once on every single metric you would like to have in this config. And finally, for every selected metric, you can change the label, the unit, and the thresholds for the color coding. And now, instead of selecting and configuring every single metric in every single widget, we can go and select our metric configuration to be used within the widgets. And now, if we need to change a metric label, unit, or threshold for the color coding, we only need to change one config file. In this video, you have learned how to create multiple views within one heatmap and how to create metric configurations to make widget config easier and reusable. In the next video, you will learn how to export and import dashboards and other content in VMware Aria Operations. Thank you for watching this video and make sure you don't miss the next part.